Our next reader is a young man that I have been following with much interest. Please welcome to the stage VanFan42.
It wasn't that Megatron preferred for his birth partners to be compliant, sedate, submissive. Quite the opposite, in fact. He enjoyed Starscream's vigorous reciprocity. How often he tried to steal the control of the moment back. No matter that Megatron was bigger, stronger, dominant in the act. But the biting was starting to get odd. They had started as little nips to his thumb, sometimes to the edge of helmet, on occasion the insides of his thighs. A barely there pressure from sharp denta that was enough of a pleasant tingle. Megatron would purr and kiss him all the fiercer. Starscream would have sighed dreamily and settled once again, his brief foray into vampirism forgotten. Then their frequency grew, and the intent behind them shifted from playful and teasing to something more determined. Starscream sinking his denta into his neck cables and pulling and growling like he was trying to make a point, or perhaps taking revenge for some sort of disagreement Megatron couldn't even remember them having. He didn't at all mind the roughness, whatever Starscream's reasoning. It took more than a seeker's denta to distract him from the task at hand, particularly when the task was Starscream himself, and he was always so very gloriously sprawled across the berth, optics hooded, lips glistening with energon from Megatron's bleeding wounds. No, the problem came from the lasting evidence of Starscream's fangs.
That is not the Transformers I remember.
It's from Transformers 6. No, that is from some slash fiction from the person called Spoon888 from an archive of our own.
All right.
Thank you, Spoon, for your anonymously donating things. So Spoon888, if you're listening, hopefully this gets you some more reads. All right, so this is the podcast where two guys talk about random movies thanks to a random algorithm.
Because we don't know what to watch.
Exactly. This is WDKWTW.
Yes.
Okay, I'll get the acronym eventually. And with me is the Megatron to my Starscream, or more importantly, the Vanguard to my Krang. Wish it was Krang.
That would have been cool.
Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. Kyle, how's it going?
It's going all right. Today, we are recording on my 40th birthday. That means nothing to anyone because this will probably come out months later, but just knowing.
Happy birthday, Kyle. You starting drawing from retirement yet?
Not quite yet. I don't think I've built it up enough. We need more subscribers to our YouTube channel.
You could just donate straight to his 401k.
Yes, please do.
He's got to put 2 kids through college.
And it's not going to be easy. All right, what did we watch this time?
We watched the film Slash from 2016.
Okay, and I have to say, before we went into this movie, I watched the trailer, and I knew it was like about fan fiction, but I didn't actually know the term slash. And I looked it up, and it apparently started back in the 70s, and slash is specifically fan fiction that's of a same-sex relationship between fictional characters, and generally male. And when it's 2 female characters, it's femme slash, apparently. But it originated in the 70s when people would start writing fan fiction about Kirk and Spock together, and it would be Kirk, and they would abbreviate it Kirk/Spock, so that's where the slash came in. I thought that was kind of interesting. I had no clue where that came from and what the title meant until after I looked it up after watching this movie. So, but this movie is about a kid who writes slash fiction, and he seems kind of like an outcast, like he kind of hides it.
I mean, if you're going to categorize this film, would you categorize it as like more of a coming of age coming of age, or it's like sexual awakening type film? So would you want to double feature this with like Call Me by Your Name?
Possibly,
because I mean it's about
it is a coming of age,
and it does deal with sex a lot.
Yes. However, I went with a different route as you'll see at the end of.
Okay. I can't wait for the double feature, but
I did not take the peach screwing movie.
You got to stop teasing me.
So where do we start with this?
I guess let's start at the very beginning. So it starts in some sort of sci-fi beginning where we see a ship coming down onto a desert planet.
And it is just cheesy, low budget alien space fare,
And then it shows this cool looking guy who kind of reminded me of like sort of either someone from the Destiny games or like a Master Chief sort of guy. His name is Vanguard. And Vanguard will save the Pleasure Planet as we hear narration. Then it cuts to our main character, Neil, who's actually writing this story on his laptop.
And you see that he pans across his room and he's got a bunch of Vanguard books. So like in this movie, Vanguard is a huge popular fictional character.
So this could stand in for like Star Wars or
Star Trek, Kirk
or
Spock, or
whatever, Stargate or
any one of those science fiction shows.
Star Crash. Okay, maybe not Star Crash, but
Battlestar Galactica.
A Star is Born. Big Bradley Cooper fan.
Then what are we getting into? Real person /
I don't know. Well, that just reminds me of the episode of, I think, Bob's Burgers, where like Tina was writing erotic friend fiction, where she was like this type of fiction, but just between her friends.
I've not yet watched that show, but I've been meaning to.
It's a lot of fun. I have the cookbook. It's pretty
I
good.
do too. It came in the loot crate, I remember.
Nice. It's a good cookbook. Anyway, so it kind of goes through a few scenes of them cutting between what Vanguard is doing and what Neil is writing. And then it comes where Vanguard meets his evil bad guy. And the bad guy's name, what? Crag?
Yeah, I don't know if I
think it's Crag. Krag is how I spelled it.
Generic space bad guy.
And then, space hero and space bad guy, they get real close up to each other. And then, they take off each other's masks because the air is breathable for normal humans or whatever. And then there's this great moment because, the bad guy also has like this sexy alien slave girl that I'm sure you could find at any bad sci-fi movie or sci-fi convention. And then so like first, then there's a great scene where he's like, Vanguard looked at Crag, then looked at the slave girl, then looked at Crag, then looked at the slave girl, then looked at Crag. And then Kyle's kind of giggling, but you can kind of see where this is going. And then, I was just like thinking to myself, kiss, 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 kiss. And by God, they do.
Not knowing that slash fiction was like a same-sex thing, I thought this was gonna he's gonna beat up the bad guys and go for the women, but then I'm like, well, that's just an actual episode of Star Trek. So that's not really fanfic, is it? So so we got the villain and the hero together, and these are the stories that our protagonist Neil writes.
This is what he's into, so all right, good for you, bud.
Yeah. So then we go to school, and you see that he kind of like keeps to himself. It looks like he's in the drama club and helping out with a play there, and it gets really confusing because you don't know if like the whole movie it questions whether he's gay or straight. And I thought that like eventually when you find out, you don't really find out, and then I thought that just made it seem really weird with some of the other scenes with one of the kids from the play.
But at the same time, I mean, maybe he's just he doesn't know either.
Yeah, that is the case.
That's kind of the major plot point, is that he's just trying to figure stuff out for himself, and that's very common for a teenager to do.
Yeah, and he's trying to figure out who he likes and actually, like in this movie, which gender he likes. So, but he is sitting on the sidelines at drama club. So I think he's like isn't he like a stand-in or something?
He's like a stage manager or some kind of behind-the-scenes guy, just kind of generally helping out.
So he's writing, and then he gets his notebook knocked out of his hand, and it ends up going around class in the next classroom.
And then like the whole school reads it, and he feels terrible. And then I just kind of wish like if it was like his own burn book, like from Mean Girls.
Yeah. No, don't let that get out. Everybody will know.
Yes, and then
they'll all know how terrible they are. And
then Tina Fey has to get a group assembly together.
But no, it's just boring old slash fic. And he ends up in. Well, there's also another troublemaker in the class, Julie, who's kind of like a rebel. And
yeah, Juliet. She just kind of reminded me of just the way she acted. Just kind of reminded me a lot of Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah, she did have a kind of Aubrey Plaza vibe to her.
So either A, this was April Ludgate before she moved to Pawnee, Indiana, because I think this takes place in Texas, or this was Lenny from Legion before she met David Haller. It would explain a few things.
All right.
You should watch Legion. It's a good show, Kyle.
I should. Is that X-Men related show?
Yeah. X-Men adjacent, I guess.
Okay. I'll have to check it out. It looked interesting. I just don't watch a lot of TV shows. Too many shows I want to watch, so I just don't watch any of them.
I would recommend Legion, especially just because visually it's insane in the best sort of way.
All right. So they both end up in the office, and
because Neil wrote this notebook and said, "This isn't appropriate for class. Get out of here." And then Julia's just kind of being, rebellious teenage manic pixie dream girlism.
Yeah, and ends up in the office too somehow. So then she finds out that what he's writing, because it has been passed around, and she's like, "Ooh, I think at that point she hints that she writes that kind of stuff, and no, she says she does, but then she hints about where it's posted online, and so he gets the hint and and he goes home that day and finds a website called The Rabbit's Hole, and it's just the rear end of a rabbit
going into a hole.
If
you know what I mean, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
It's very subtle.
And that kind of brings us to, Rule 34, which is brought up later in the film.
Yeah.
Which is,
if it exists, there's porn for it.
On the internet. So, yeah. There's some fun, always some great Google results there if you just type in something and go Rule 34.
I don't recommend doing that.
I do.
At work, especially.
Especially at work, on a public computer. Safe search off.
The best advice you'll ever get. So he becomes friends because, they have something in common, and they both write this stuff, and he starts ditching school with her because she's the rebellious kind, and
and then
they go and smoke a joint in the behind the baseball field.
Well, before that, I really like that there's a scene where he's just trying to figure it out, finds out she's actually does some cosplay for an elf character she likes. All right, that's cool. And then we find more about Neil's family situation, where his parents' marriage is you're not sure if it's on the rocks or not. Mom's not around too much, and he has an older sister who doesn't like him because, that's what older sisters do in these kinds of movies.
Yeah, they're just jerks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just had Neil's parents splitting up, because, I don't think they really imply that they're splitting up, but you have the inkling that, they're on the verge of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's probably not helping this kid at all.
And then we cut to sort of Julia in class reading one of her own stories and talking about sort of she's meeting a sexy older man who's doing a sexy tire fill-up, which definitely seems like it's something out of a 1970s porno, or maybe the porno Log Jammin' from The Big Lebowski.
Was that before they were actually in his bedroom? And
this is before. This is just her on her own reading a story to her English class. The teacher's like, "That wasn't the assignment."
Oh, that's right. It was totally inappropriate.
This is supposed to be a true story. Who says it wasn't true? She replies.
In trouble again. She's so rebellious.
She doesn't. She's like a cop that doesn't play by the rules.
She don't care.
Instead of Dirty Harry, it's just Julia. Exact same movie, just different actors. Just replace Clint Eastwood with young Aubrey Plaza, which I'm just going to call her.
Young Aubrey Plaza. So she's showing her rebelliousness at school again with a story, and then her and Neil start forming this, just kind of bond, and it's kind of he finally finds someone he can bond with, but then she's this troublemaker that has him ditching school all the time. I'm going, well, that's not cool.
And, she's got some other friends too, like her friend Martine.
The pregnant one.
Martine is her friend who's is a pregnant teen. Kind of, does whatever, doesn't really care. There's a great scene where she and Julia are smoking. And then she's like, it's you shouldn't be smoking when you're pregnant. My mom smoked when she was pregnant with me. Because, you turned out fine.
She had the best lines, because then there was also later where Julie kept coming by, and this, it was new for Neil to have friends over, so his parents notice, oh, he's got a girl over here. And then Martine comes one time later in the movie, and she knocks on the door, and the dad opens up the door and goes, "Neil, your friends are multiplied." She goes, "Is that a pregnancy joke?" I thought that was pretty good. So Julie and Neil are in his bedroom checking out the website and his writing and stuff, and then they start getting a little close and end up on the bed.
And then she's like, no, man.
She starts making out with him first, but then Neil's sister comes in and she starts hitting on her and eventually says, well, all girls are bisexual. All of them.
They just don't realize it. You know? It's like, okay, is this where this character is going, or is she just kind of acting out to act out? And then, there's this big argument. It's just that, all right, Neil, I read your stuff. It's good. You should submit it, and then you can get comments and get better. And she's like, I don't know. Then I just wrote down, never read the comments, especially if it's a YouTube comment section.
Yes. Luckily, we haven't had any comments yet because I don't need to read negative comments.
I don't know. Some of it is good. Some of it is bad. From what I understand.
Please comment below and let us know.
Yes, and tell us how we can make $100,000 a year with this one easy trick.
I could use the money to put my girls through college. So did she send the story to... I have that she sent the story to Jack, who shared it with a girl.
Okay,
Where
so
was
this
I
was you skipped it around a bit. So when they're hanging out, at one point they go see like the Vanguard movie that's in theaters, and then he's just talking about, I was like, this movie's never as good because it's never like how I picture Vanguard in my head. It's like, yeah, I'm only into this just for the slash fiction. I don't actually care about this story that much. And they just go like this, and then Neil says, this movie is terrible. I've seen it 5 times.
Yeah, it's totally a conversation that like every Star Wars nerd fan has, where it's like, oh, these movies suck so bad, and then, have you seen it though? Yeah, I've seen it 12 times.
Yeah.
It's not the same. It's always, they just ruin it,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was a very real conversation, actually, unfortunately.
So then after that, they smoke a joint behind the mall or whatever, and they're getting to know each other better. And then Neil isn't sure whether he likes girls or whether he likes guys, because, all the fan fiction that he prefers to write tends to be between 2 men. So stuff about that. And then, of course, they mentioned the con is coming.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan. No, it's whatever, the Texas Comic Convention, I think in like San Antonio or...
I don't remember where it was, but yeah, there's a convention coming, and there's an actual panel for slash fiction writers, which I don't know. Is this something that happens in a lot of cons? Because I've been to a few cons, and like, I don't know if this is something that like happens off to the side and you just don't hear about it, or I'm assuming, since this is a thing, that it does happen.
I'm sure it happens, and I'm sure that like I said, if there's it might be one of those situations where it's technically not necessarily officially sanctioned by the con. It's more con adjacent. Maybe happens offsite at a hotel somewhere.
Yeah. Because then Julie says that she submitted a story to the group. I don't even know. Did they have a name for the group?
It was just like Rabbit's Hole, based off of the website.
Yeah, and so she submitted work there, and a select few get selected to read their fan fiction or their slash fiction at the convention in front of a bunch of other slash fiction writers. And so she submitted, and she's in the running, but she's one of the last. They're looking for one more submission, yes. And she's one of the finalists, but she also tells Neil to submit his, because she says, well, you're good,
Yeah, one of us might get in.
Yeah.
And then, of course, naturally this website also has a chat function. I'm not sure that if like fanfiction.net has a chat function. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But then he starts chatting with the moderator.
Who is, we find out later, is played by Michael Ian Black of The State fame, which, I had to think about that. And I looked this up because I always think that he's in Kids in the Hall. But then I even looked it up, and it's like he gets sick of people thinking he's in Kids in the Hall because he looks so much like, I can't remember the actor's name actually who was in that. And they look very similar. But he was in The State, and Michael Ian Black was in The State, and Wet Hot American Summer, and movies like that. I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff.
I have not seen anything. That and Kids in the Hall mean nothing to me.
Oh, okay. Well,
old man.
Yes, we've established. Kids in the Hall was probably when I was in high school, so it's been a while. But before he makes friends with him, I do have to say there was a great scene when the parents go into his room and find this fiction up on his computer, and they think that it's just stuff that he's reading. And the dad takes some of his work and starts like correcting the grammar in it.
It's like, well, some of this just has really weird rudimentary grammatical errors. And then
it's like, I don't want you reading. And it's like he was reprimanding him for reading it because it was written poorly, not because of the content.
Like, you're going to develop some bad writing habits from this. You're just...
So I thought that was kind of a funny scene. But then Julie was actually there when they discovered it, and she was being very not helpful with the whole situation. But he submits his work. And this guy that he makes friends with on there, I don't think he knows right away that it's the curator.
Yeah, I mean, he knows it's the moderator, but he's just not sure, who the moderator is, because it's, it's anonymous random people on the internet. It was like something 69, because of course that was a screen name.
Well, and what was the first thing the moderator said to him was something like
hey,
do you like big dicks or something like that? It's just like the opening statement. And then he finds out that this guy is like 38 years old, and he's pretending to be 18 because he's only 17, and you need to be 18 to
Actually, I think he's 15, so...
Oh, that's right. He is only 15.
And then we have a few more interludes with the fan fiction. Then he reads a Vanguard story that was written by the moderator, and then it has like Vanguard and then some other bad guy, and like they're like starting to put a plan together. Bad guy walks away. Bad guy comes back. Then it just shows Vanguard and like a bunch of people just like making out on top of this table, just going at it. Then he just starts like then I wrote down in my notes, the ear is a highly erogenous zone. I believe that was a quote.
The curator, after they get to know each other, he says that he likes Neil's work, and he had said that the last slot was coming down to him and Fane. And who is Fane? Of course, it's Julie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to come down to the two of them, and the curator or the moderator or whatever says, are you 18? And he's like, I want to know that you're like the legit age, because he's getting to know him like through the chat. And so he says, yes, I am. And then he says, Fane, you know her. Is she 18? And then it cuts away, so you don't know what his answer was.
Mm-hmm. And around all this time, then Mom comes home, and that's when we get the big scene where his parents find out what he's reading. It's like, and then I wrote down, it's a basic plotting problem and some rudimentary grammatical errors that are the issues. And then another subplot that's going out this is kind of Julia's relationship with her on-again, off-again boyfriend. I think it was like his name was like Tom or something. I forget. You've got the credits. You've got the...
Oh, yeah. Was it Mike? Or did I have the wrong name?
I think it was Mike.
Yeah.
And Mike is like an older dude, drives a van. He's cool. He drinks a lot.
And it's actually one of those storylines where it is... I think that, she's rebellious, but she is also kind of the same as Neil, where she doesn't know how to be accepted, like, for who she is. And so she found someone who likes her, quote unquote, and but he still makes fun of her, but he stays with her. And so she just takes the abuse because she found someone, so like, it's one of those bad relationships where it's like, well, I'm just with him because he actually wants to be with me, but he treats her like dirt.
And then, Martine mentions this. Yeah, it seems like everything she finds a bad guy. Then, she eventually comes around, that sort of thing. And, it's like, can you imagine? I can't put up with her. Then Martine just says, can you imagine putting up with their parents?
So we have that going on. And then
we get the dinner scene with his parents, and then Julie is there too, talking about Neil's sort of things as a writer. It's like, oh, and then Julie's there kind of like sweet talking him. I'm a writer too. I like this. It's like, stop it. Our situations are different. His mom's like, well, I experimented when I was young. I even went to a key party once. And I looked up what a key party was. A key party is apparently a thing where like you go to a party, then all the men kind of put their keys in a jar or something, and then you'd be like a swingers type party. Then the women would go on, and then they would like pick a random set of keys that's sort of not like who they're in a relationship with, so they could go home and then have sex with a different partner.
Okay, that's a party.
Kyle's looking at me like this, but we both know that he did that sort of thing all the time in middle school.
Yes, in middle school, that was a strange, weird time for me at middle school. I do a lot of stuff there. Let's not talk about that, though. I think I've heard of those key parties. I just had forgotten what it was.
I looked it up on Urban Dictionary.
Yeah.
Another place you got to be careful.
Yes. Because sometimes you're like, what does this mean? Oh, I didn't want to know what that meant. So they have the dinner party, and don't they talk about going to the con, and his parents don't want him to go or something?
Yeah. And she's like, and then Julia's like, later they're like, come on, man, our situations are the same. Our situations are completely different. Her parents don't really care. We don't even actually see her parents in the entire film.
No, and she has different stories about them. Like, she tells him they're divorced, and she tells his parents that her dad is dead, and so I don't think she has the greatest relationship with her parents.
Yeah, but then you've got Dad who wants to be Neil's friend. So later, when Neil's kind of making his own Vanguard costume because he still wants to go to the con, Dad comes down and says, "All right, well, as far as your mom knows, you're staying at your cousin's."
Yeah, so he's the cool dad. Says, I know where you're going, so it's all right. We
Have
just
a
won't
good
tell
time.
Mom.
Yeah, be safe. Don't tell Mom. Here's some money.
So he makes his suit, and Julia has a costume for her Fane character. And that's when they go, she doesn't show up. So Neil has to go to her boyfriend, Julia's boyfriend's place. Yeah, he meets with Martine first because she didn't show up, and then he goes there, and Mike is being a dick about the whole thing and making fun of his Vanguard costume,
and then we find out that Mike actually lives with his mom.
Yeah,
because he's one of those abusive boyfriend, kind of good for nothing deadbeat sort of guys.
And so he gets Julia, and they go. Is it Julie or Julia? I keep saying one of the.
It's Julia.
It is Julia. I think I've been saying Julie the whole time, but it was Julia.
And then I think at one point Mike actually comes out of the house in a literal wife beater, sort of. It's like, oh, well,
yeah, because he comes out to make fun of makes fun of the Vanguard costume because Neil's already dressed up for the con. Mm-hmm. And then is it Julia that actually pushes him over and says, "I'm going to the con"?
Yeah.
So
that relationship ends, and
then
I wrote in my notes, she's in a bad relationship. She needs help.
She really does.
And then they go to the con.
And it turns out that all the hotel rooms are taken, so there's only one left with a single bed. So they have to take that one, and they go down to the con. So they're going to share this room, and they go down to the con, and they find some back room where kids are talking about a party, and Julia basically shoves ecstasy into Neil's mouth. Is like, and he's he's like, I don't want to do this, and she's like, here, take it. So,
but then she's like, no, I mean, is this acid? I don't know. Have you heard of acid flashbacks? They stay with you.
I have the quote down. He goes, I'm so stoned on acid. I mean, Molly. He doesn't even know what he took. He just keeps saying, I'm so stoned.
And then they have a big party sequence. Life is going pretty good. Also, who gives you drugs at a convention? No one does that. Not in my experience. That seems kind of like, I know some people want to get super drunk or something, but no one is just going to hand you random drugs. This isn't Burning Man. But it's not a music festival.
But maybe we don't know the right crowds. I've been to plenty of cons too, and maybe someone who's listening to this will say, hey, you got to know the right people and knock on the right doors.
But they were handed them by this guy in a hot dog costume.
Yeah.
And I believe, my name is Hot Dog Steve. And then in the credits, he was credited as Hot Dog Steve.
After that, I'm not sure Neil really wants Julia, because if you want to date someone who shoves ecstasy down your throat when you don't want it.
So then they have a big party sequence. At one point, they go to this cool party with lots of, glow sticks, sort of
go to a
DJ
rave.
music, rave having music. Those are cool. I'm sure those are pretty common at cons as far as I know. And then at one point he starts hallucinating what he thinks to be the real Vanguard from his fan fiction, who's partying with him. Yeah, no, it's fun. I like that the guy, the Vanguard, just kept showing up.
Yeah,
now and again as a character. That was a nice touch.
After the party, they're both stoned, and they go back to the hotel room, and they start fooling around because, like we've said before, he doesn't know what his sexuality is. So he starts messing around with her because he starts liking her. And then he starts, while she's up in the bathroom or something, he starts writing fanfic about both of them. And they have a good night, and
They're
then
right.
and
They kiss. They do other stuff. They do what two consenting adults do,
yeah, and then even though
which is
they're
go
not
out to a nice
adults,
dinner and then
but
maybe do some taxes.
what two consenting teenagers do. But then he wakes up in the morning and she's gone, and the pages that he wrote are all ripped up in the garbage. So like he doesn't know what's going on, what he did, and so they have a fight, and they have a fight there because he's angry that she ripped it up.
Well, before that, she just kind of leaves him for a little bit, and he's been concerned. So then he decides to meet up with
Dennis, because
that's the guy's name, Dennis.
Yeah, Dennis is the moderator, played by Michael Ian Black, and that's why she was angry and ripped it up, because he was getting texts from Dennis, because he keeps texting him going, "Are you at the con yet? Are you at the con yet?" And he never mentioned to her that he's meeting the moderator. Mm-hmm. So she's actually pissed at him for that. And
this is actually a reversal of this whole the Mike subplot throughout the film, because it seems like she's just been getting random texts from Mike, and then would just kind of leave and then just go assumedly go and just go do stuff with Mike at his place.
Yeah. So now he's doing supposedly doing the same thing, because she thinks it's, I don't know if she thinks it's a sexual thing or if it's just that, like, oh, he's going to meet the moderator, and whatever, to see if he can get his writing in.
And then he goes to meet Dennis, and it's like, oh, Dennis seems like an okay guy. So they start going around, and they go to like this exhibit. And then I think in the background, when he's kind of going to something with Dennis, I think I saw a furry in the background. Just thought it was noted, because no matter where you go in the world, if you're at a con, there will be at least one furry. That is sort of guaranteed. That is like the con rules.
Is this like the side building at any con?
Maybe. I mean, but as we said, we like to generally be sex positive. So if you're into something, good for you. That's awesome.
Well, and that's the whole theme of this movie too, is just not judging these people. They're showing them in how they have the same problems that we have. It's just they're into /fiction. Like, so they write gay fan fiction. What's wrong with that? Like, there are people that write all sorts of weird stuff. So it's kind of like the whole theme of this is like Neil accepting himself for who he is, and then also showing we need to accept like this. These are just normal people here, because it's generally the crowd that gets mocked the most. So,
and then, when they're looking at this art exhibit of all these nice fan art, a lot of it more explicit sort of things, like, this is just what people are like. It's like, it's like, wow, I didn't think there was something for everything. Yes, there is. There's Rule 34, Neil. Exists, there's porn of it.
You don't know Rule 34? Why is it? Have you looked up why it's Rule 34? What are the first 33 rules? Or do we want to know?
I think they just picked a random number.
Okay.
Kind of like how the Marvel Universe is Earth 616.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a seemingly random number. I mean, some people have kind of picked it, but I think it was just picked by a guy from Marvel UK writing Captain Britain. I think it might have actually been picked by Alan Moore.
Oh.
Because of course Alan Moore has something to do with it.
Of course.
Anyway, so then he explains one of my favorite plot points, which is curtain fic, which is generally where like a fiction written by older gays who are kind of past sex, or they're not as, I guess, sexually motivated anymore in writing their fiction. So it just talks about there's two fictional characters like Kirk and Spock going to get curtains at Pottery Barn.
That was awesome.
They sell curtains at Pottery Barn? They sell everything at Pottery Barn.
I thought that was a great line, and also I just love the idea of curtain fic.
I mean, I'm sure it's probably real.
I'm guessing it's probably, like you said, it's just the people like, oh, I'm done writing sex stories about these characters. They're old now. They're on the front porch, just sitting on the rocking chairs and talking about going and buying curtains at Pottery Barn.
And then we meet sort of the head editor of the fiction place, but also at this whole time we find out that Julia has kind of slowly been following around, feeling kind of forlorn, like, oh, you're being abandoned by your new friends, that sort of thing. And of course there's a confrontation where they're unhappy.
Yeah. So, and I have written down, was this around the time then that he walks out of there and Michael Ian Black follows him, Dennis follows him out, and he kisses him? Well, Neil kisses Dennis.
This is after sort of the drinks are seen with the writers or with the people who work on Rabbit's Hole website.
Okay, yeah, because they meet another one of the head people, played by Missy Pyle, who
What was her name? I think
it was Ronnie.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen Missy Pyle. You've seen her in a million things, but I can't pinpoint exactly what I know her from. But I know I've seen her in a billion different things.
Then she was kind of a grumpy lady. He's like, yeah. It's like, well, at least for your Vanguard, come on, everyone does that. Well, and then like another guy chimes in. Well, at least we're not like you, Ronnie. We write stuff about television shows from the '60s. And then she says, Brady Bunch is from the 1970s.
Yeah, and I think that she liked Fane's work better, whereas
Correct,
Dennis likes Neil better.
Yes.
And they ended up picking Neil. And then they walk out of there.
She insults him like, you act like, you write like you're only like a 12-year-old, like you've never had sex before, that sort of thing.
Which
like,
is,
I've had sex.
Which is basically
I know all
true.
about the sex. We do the kissing, and then we bump our butts together, and
then a baby happens.
And then a baby appears.
From a stork. That's what I was told.
And then we get to the most uncomfortable scene in the film.
So uncomfortable.
And it's played as uncomfortable, which I think is important to note, too. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's not, like, unwittingly creepy.
Yeah, because, I mean, Dennis is kind of creepy. Like he's... Because he first hits on Neil online knowing that he's only 18 years old. Mm-hmm. Or knowing that he's only 18 years old. And he's 38, so he's already 20 years his senior. So, like, it's... Nothing wrong with, what is it, like a May-December romance, whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. But, it's still, going after someone who's like just out of high school age when you're almost 40 years old is just a little weird.
Yeah, to quote Community, Annie's pretty young, we try not to sexualize her. So, Neil's pretty young, we try not to sexualize him.
Yeah, but they walk out, Neil storms out of there, and then Dennis follows him and talks to him just a little bit, and then Neil
she was really mean. I'm sure you're just fine. And then he just kind of...
Out of the blue, Neil just kisses him. And he's like, oh, let's go somewhere else. So
then they go to Dennis's car, which is just, like a regular car.
And they start making out in there, and then Neil...
Give me your ID. Show me your ID. How old are you? So then there's kind of been this whole thing. Is, are you sure you're 18? Are you sure you're 18? From everyone. From this and he just says, he finally breaks down and says, I'm 15. And then,
And then Dennis is like, oh, wait a minute. 18's okay. 15, no.
Well, yeah, because that's when
statutory rape. It is statutory rape. But I was like... But it was still weird that you're okay with when he was 18.
Mm-hmm. Well, even then, it was starting to get more and more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like, dude...
But then it actually turns into from uncomfortable into kind of a good scene when he just sits and talks to him.
Yeah.
And basically says, you're a good writer. Like, don't... Here's where I got a little confused because they're trying to show accepting these people and, these are just people too. But then it's also condemning them at the same time because he's like, don't get stuck doing slash fiction. Like, I've been doing this forever, and like it's just like a dead end thing where it's like go and write and do your own thing. But it is kind of pushing him to go and write something of his own. Mm-hmm. And it was a great scene where he's like, I didn't go out and explore more than just slash fiction. It was a great start, and I just stayed
now
there.
I'm 38 years old, and I live with my mom.
Yeah.
Outside of cons, I had like no social skills, stuff like that.
Yeah,
it was definitely a well-acted scene between both, and I bought it from both actors.
Yeah. So basically telling him, okay, that's great. You're still young, and you've got talent. I like your writing, and you should start, just branching out a little with your writing. And so then he goes back to the hotel. And him and Julia go to the reading together because they talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I followed you to the restaurant and everything. And so I know you were with Dennis and all that. So they talk it out and they go to the reading together.
And then another thing we want to mention is that when Julia went missing from her, she went looking for her. And then we find Julia. She had submitted some original stuff to like some like editor or something for like a boutique publisher's like.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, there's read some stuff, and it's okay, but then, it's like, well, we could use you, especially being female. There's more than one factor to be published. I was like, oh, great. Sexism at a con. Imagine that.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. I think everyone deserves to be included for their own, which is why if you go to a con, just don't be like that.
Yeah.
We don't need any gatekeeping. It's like, if if you've seen like a single episode of Star Trek, or even if you just like the shirts, you're a fan of Star Trek. If you haven't seen a single Star Wars movie, but you still like the music, you're a Star Wars fan.
It's the whole fake fangirl thing, too, where it's like, oh, you just go and you don't even really care about this. You just dress in this skimpy outfit. How do you know?
Yeah,
how do you know they're not into this? Like,
if you want to cosplay as someone, that's fine.
Yeah.
Also, don't body shame someone for their choice in cosplay. That's another thing. If you want to be like a really big hairy guy but cosplay as Sailor Moon, good for you. And that goes for both the men and women. You shouldn't body shame anyone for what they choose to cosplay as, whether they have the quote-unquote right body type or not. Who cares?
Yeah, it's all just in good fun.
The fun of cosplay is generally making your own costume.
Yeah.
And you deserve to show off your hard work, because you put a lot of hard work in.
Oh, there's a lot of work going into those costumes. So...
But anyway...
Anyway, they go to the reading, and he's chosen to go up there. And I have a line written down that they find out that he's only 15 because what's her face?
Yes, Ronnie kind of spills the beans.
Yeah, and someone says something in the crowd, and someone calls out, "You write Ninja Turtle bondage porn. Don't judge him."
Nice. Yeah, there's some great one-off lines in here from just kind of like smaller parts. And then I really like the person who went before them. It was like, Kings of the Netherverse. It was like Dumbledore and Gandalf. Fan fiction is like, oh, we have to close the portal to the Netherverse. We'll only do through simultaneous mutual orgasms. Stuff like that. And if you, once again, it can be fun, it can be funny, and as long as we're all in on the joke, that's fine. But once again, if you're into that sort of thing, good for you. Fan fiction is pretty harmless.
Oh, and one thing we didn't mention was earlier, because this is all about like finding out who you are and stuff. There was another great scene between Neil and Julia that when they were making out and whatever in the hotel room, and he says, "I think I really like you," and there was a whole thing about, I've never fallen in love with anyone before, and she says, "You mean any girl?" And he goes, "No, anyone." So like, and then she asks him why, and he says, "Because I can be myself around. I'm not ashamed of myself around you." So I mean, which is a great. I mean, that was a great line, just because it's matching up the two themes of this, is like accepting yourself, and also how to find like not necessarily even love, but like a companionship. You have to be comfortable with yourself before you can be comfortable with someone else.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great line. It's like, I haven't liked anyone else in man or woman because I haven't found someone I'm comfortable being myself around.
Yeah, I think this film definitely feels very personal, and I'm not sure if the writer-director had any sort of personal situation similar to this, but it kind of has a very personal feel to, like, this is definitely coming from someone's heart, and this comes off as very sincere, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And so they're found out at the reading, and I don't remember, does he get to read his stuff then?
He gets to read part of his story, and then, Ronnie doesn't get all the way through, and then, Dennis like, guys, this was my bad.
Yeah.
I did this. He tries to take some of the blame, but they get kicked out anyway.
Which rightfully so. They shouldn't, I mean, they're underage and obey the rules there,
Yeah.
But so then they leave, and then it's
on the drive back is some funny moments.
There's another great line from Julia where she assumes the whole time that he's gay, even after the part where they're making out in the hotel room, and she says, "Well, I'm a lesbian, and if you're gay, then we can be a gay couple."
Since I'm mannish and you're like a girl.
Yeah, so
wait, I'm like a girl?
So I thought that was really weird logic, but it was really funny.
And then kind of this is where the big confession comes out when they're on the way back. Julia, it's like, I'm in love with you, and I'm the reason they didn't pick you. It was down to me and you, and I told them that you were 15. It's like, how could you? And then, she gets mad, she breaks up, they break up, I guess, whatever little romance they had. It's like, Julia, whatever you do, you're good, please keep writing, you're good, please keep writing.
And this is another thing I appreciated. He told the truth, and then we didn't have some sort of quick makeup scene or, oh, it's all good now. This was something that she should be really upset about, because he submitted and he knew that it was between the two of them, and he got hers booted out of there. So, I mean, she's mad at him. So this isn't a completely happy ending movie where it's like, oh, boy and girl get together at the end. Like, they show what would really happen. They're going to be mad for a while. And then it cuts to 1 month later.
And life is going on as normal. He's still
Yeah.
writing some stuff. He checks onto rabbitshole.com, tries to log in, and boom, he's restricted for being under 18. So
Yeah, and then he's sitting with Martine, the pregnant girl, and she's going, she'll come around, you know. So
and we see scenes of Julia where she's kind of found a new boyfriend. She's dressing up in a new style. Now it looks like she's like wearing all black, like some sort of goth or emo chick with a goth or emo boyfriend.
yeah, and it seems like she still hasn't figured out who she is yet by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. And Neil hasn't figured out really himself either, but he's
starting to accept like what direction he needs to go, though, which is great. And there was one other line that there was a lot of lines that I really liked in this movie.
There's some good jokes.
When they came back from the con, you know, sisters are butt heads, you know, older sisters are butt heads. I had an older sister, but they still love you and they want like what's best for you. And there's a great line when he comes back from the con and I think he's sad because he had the fight with Julia and his sister comes up and goes, well, I hope you lost your cherry, Neely Bopper. So I thought that was pretty good, like big sister moment there.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, this film ends with how it begins, with Neil writing some fiction about Vanguard and Craig, but then shows has some nice kind of overview, learn some things up, and then shows Vanguard looking at Craig looking at Vanguard, and Vanguard is holding something in like a package. He opens up the package, and it's curtains.
He's already graduated to curtain fic.
Which I think was a great way to end the film.
Yeah, yeah.
So overall, what'd you think about this movie, Kyle?
I thought that, like I said, it's listed as a comedy, and it's not a straight up comedy. It's more of a coming of age film, and I thought it was a pretty well written coming of age movie. And even though it's not a straight up comedy, there is comedic elements. Like I said, there are a lot of really little witty one liners in there that just kind of made me, chuckle a little bit. But they just kind of lighten the mood a little here and there to keep the flow going. I thought if the movie flowed really well, I liked the characters. Neil, every once in a while, I wasn't sure about his acting, but I thought he was pretty good. And like you said, once it got past the weird phase in the car scene, then that was a really good scene between him and Michael Ian Black. And I liked the themes and what it was trying to do. And it was a very honest movie.
Yeah, I think that's a good word for it. Honest, and it just felt sincere because it written like a film that cares about its characters. It's not feel like a filmmaker who doesn't really care about it. It doesn't, thing with like in the Transformers movies, the more you realize that Michael Bay doesn't care about any of the people in it. He just or the robots. He
just want explosions.
and that's that's your thing. But
Michael Bay, it would have just been like furries all over the place in the con. Just like, look at these! Wah!
Chris, Michael Bay seems like he doesn't really like people. The more you try and read into it, but
is
whatever.
that a giant mogwai?
If only. Don't get it. Don't feed it after midnight, if you know what I mean.
So So overall, I really enjoyed this movie. This was a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it hit our 90% or better or above. It was 19 fresh reviews and 2 rotten though. So, but the audience score was only 56%, and I'm going to say I kind of want to look at these and kind of judge if, you kind of weigh between the audience and the critics. Sometimes critics can love something that's just a little too artsy because it's artsy, but then sometimes they do like something that the audience hates, but it actually is a pretty solid movie. I would say this is somewhere in between, closer to the critics score, I think. Mm-hmm. Because it was a real solid movie, and it was well written, and it was, like I said, it was just a good, solid, honest movie.
Yeah, and I guess, would you recommend this movie to others?
I would, yeah, especially anybody who feels like they're a part of something that they get kind of ostracized for, and they feel like they can't be themselves, and it's just a good movie to show. You know what? Yeah, there are scenes where he's getting mocked, but overall, it's you got to get over that and just do what you love.
I guess it's definitely a niche film, because if you don't kind of understand what fan fiction is or really how it works, or maybe haven't been on to a convention, just kind of know what that whole kind of sphere is like.
And it hits for like me, because I grew up in the, like 80s into the 90s, and I was in high school in the 90s when being a nerd wasn't quite as cool. It was like we still weren't at the stage for like where now being a nerd is kind of cool. But so I could relate to being made fun of for, certain things, and for the stuff that I like. So, but what did you think overall?
I thought it was good. I see you got some like trivia here. Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you on most points. I liked it. I thought it was very sincere and that I felt it was very well made. And overall, I think I definitely recommend this movie for it's a good coming of age film for a nerdy crowd, I guess, if you're tired of some John Hughes stuff, which of course has its own issues, especially when you name an Asian character Long Duck Dong. That didn't age well at all.
No, there are certain things in the 80s that did not age well, but I will still love them forever. Yeah, I don't have much on this because there was not a lot to find out about this movie. It played at South by Southwest in March of 2016 and then opened in 3 theaters in December of 2016 and made about $6,000 over 2 weeks. So it did not have much of an audience. And it didn't even say anywhere how it played at South by Southwest. So it must not have gotten it. If something gets buzz at South by Southwest, you're gonna hear about it. And I didn't hear about this when it came out. Mm-hmm. So South by Southwest is one of those. It's in Austin, Texas every year, and it's one of those that I would really like to hit. It's a movie and musical,
music kind of thing. Because they have a lot of movies like they do at something like Sundance, but then they also have a lot of music too. So it's kind of an interesting half and half. Yeah. And then they also have a lot of, quote, nerd culture stuff there too. It's kind of San Diego Comic-Con-y, kind of more indie music stuff, kind of Sundance-y. They're definitely better for genre fairs if you want to see like a new horror movie or something. That South by Southwest is a good place to go.
So, and the only other thing I have written down is that Clay Lifford was the director and the writer of this. So it might be a more personal movie because he had a couple of shorts and a couple of movies I'd never heard of, much like this one. And so he hasn't done a lot, but I think this was a solid movie for him, and I would look out for other movies by him.
Yeah, hopefully he'll do pretty well and make some more stuff, because this was definitely good and I thought it was definitely interesting. So we wish you the best if you're listening, Clay. And if you're not listening, that's cool. We wish you the best anyway. And so now we go back to our final segment of this episode, and every episode, at least from when we started doing this. This is a double feature where we try and recommend a film that we think is either goes well with this film or a film that we think could either improve or does some of the same ideas but better, because we always like to be positive.
Yeah. I mean, if it ends up being a movie, now that we're 90% or better, we're not going to run to a lot of movies that we don't necessarily like, but
it could happen.
But there are plenty of critic darlings that I can't stand. So
we could get stuck with something like Tree of Life or Terrence Malick.
Yeah, or anything by Sofia Coppola. I can't stand her.
Not a fan?
No, I'm not a fan.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to ask you first what because you know that I'm just going to go off the rails with this like I do, because I have a weird taste in movies. So I want to see what your pick for a double feature would be.
This was actually a harder one for me. I didn't figure this out until I was probably coming over to Kyle's studio to figure what I was going to pick. But I was thinking, since fan fiction and slash fiction started out with Star Trek in the 1970s, that kind of led me to Star Trek, which kind of led to me some sort of Star Trek-like movie, which kind of led me to actually, believe it or not, led me to Galaxy Quest, which, if anything, is some of the best Star Trek fan fiction ever made, because it's an homage to Star Trek and also kind of talks about Star Trek, and just it's really a celebration of Star Trek, warts and all, because there are plenty of jokes in this, like how come this like the big doomsday device, how come it always stops at one, or then just like how the people that really saved it were the fans, and even the actors, like especially Tim Allen, who's pretty much playing the William Shatner type character, how he doesn't even like the show anymore, he always hated it, that sort of thing.
Honestly, that's a great pick, and I kind of wish that I had come up with that, because Galaxy Quest is a fantastic movie.
It's one of the best Star Trek movies that Star Trek never made.
Yep, and that's one of those where it's like the list of the ranking the Star Trek movies, it's always like ranked up at the top, even though it's not a Star Trek movie. So I agree that's a great pick on that one. So
All right, what you got for me, Kyle? Lay it on me.
I went with, this one, Slash was labeled as a comedy, but it was more a coming of age. And so it was a little more of a serious tone to it. So I went with also a comedy, but I went with the other side of, he's trying to Slash is following a kid who's trying to accept himself for liking these things. I went with the opposite side of following the outsider who is making fun of them, but then learns to accept that person. I went with the 2008 comedy classic Role Models.
I have not seen this film.
Oh, I rewatched it for this, actually.
Oh, dear.
And it holds up. It's only 10 years old, but there are some jokes that are, in today's day and age, wouldn't quite be PC for movies. There's some words that are used that are like, oh, okay, we don't use that anymore. But so some jokes don't hold up, but like overall, this movie is great. It's Paul Rudd and Seann William Scott are two.
Whatever happened to Seann William Scott?
I don't know, but have you watched many of his movies?
I saw Bulletproof Monk.
He's pigeonholed as Stifler, but I've seen him in several movies where I just love watching him. Like Evolution with the caw tookie tookie scene.
The only thing I know about Evolution is I think I might have seen like a brief teaser trailer for it because it involves like the happy face with the 3 eyes.
Yes.
And then I think I've just seen the box cover back when I would go to Mr. Movies and Family Video a lot.
I don't know if I should admit this because a lot of people hate that movie. They think it's the worst comedy. And I might have just been in the right mindset because I watched it with some friends in college. It was just out of college. And the first time I watched it, I was laughing so hard through that movie that I actually fell off the couch.
Nice.
But I've watched it again since then, and it's not as funny as I found it the first time, but I still enjoy that movie, and I still quote that movie. But this one, Paul Rudd, Seann William Scott, at the beginning of the movie, they work for a energy drink company, and they ride around to schools telling kids to stay off drugs, tell them to drink the energy drinks instead. And then it's great because they're drinking like a ton of them going to the schools, and then all of a sudden you like see them at a urinal and they're just like pissing green.
Nice.
But Paul Rudd has a girlfriend, Elizabeth Banks, who's a lawyer, and he's kind of just a cynical douche to people. Like he hates everything and everyone. Mm-hmm. This is actually the movie. Have you ever seen the clip that they show where he goes into the cafe and he orders just a large coffee, and they go, do you want a venti or grande or whatever? And he goes spouting off like, venti doesn't even mean large. Grande means large. This means large. Venti is 20. And so it's making fun of all those coffee shops, which of course they don't show. Like on that clip, they're proving a point of, yeah, just call it a coffee. But then in the movie, Elizabeth Banks shows the cup and she goes, venti means 20. This is a 20 ouncer.
Nice.
But so he's just like this cynical jerk to everyone. And so she breaks up with him. So he just starts drinking so many of those drinks. And then he goes to like a school auditorium and it's like, just, yeah, drink this stuff. This is poison, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to tow his truck, and it's a giant Minotaur truck with horns.
Nice.
And he gets mad and guns it. He gets into the truck and guns it and to get it away from the tow truck, but it's on there already, and the tires hit the ground, and he runs into a horse statue. So they're going to send them to jail. Instead, they put him on community service.
So the basic kind of him trying to remake himself after doing all these terrible things.
Yeah. So that was a lot of setup, but like I love the beginning part with the whole energy drink thing. So basically, both of them are sent to community service, and their community service is to be a mentor, like a Big Brother program.
Oh, okay.
And Jane Lynch runs the program,
nice,
which is great because she's
great whenever she shows up in anything.
She's an ex-junkie who runs now a Big Brother program. And Seann William Scott gets paired with this like 8-year-old really crass black kid. And I mentioned that because he's always making fun of Paul Rudd, calling him Ben Affleck. He goes, I'm not Ben Affleck. He goes, are you white? He goes, yeah. He goes, all white people are Ben Affleck. He goes, You are kind of white. but Paul Rudd gets paired with Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who everyone knows as McLovin.
Okay.
And he is this kind of like loner guy who dresses up and goes to this Renaissance. It's called Lair in this, but it's basically LARPing. It's LARPing, but it's a live action interactive role playing something.
Yeah, so it's a LARP.
Yeah. So he does this, and Paul Rudd is just like, I'm doing this. It's community service. That's why I'm hanging out with you. And he keeps trying. Mintz-Plasse keeps trying to get him into, this is fun. This is what I do. This is where I can be whatever. And you see that his parents are like dicks about it. And Paul Rudd finally he's like, okay, I'll swing the sword around. And gradually he starts seeing like what he likes about this. And not only does it he start accepting him, he starts seeing, oh, hey, people can just be happy doing whatever. And then he starts getting a little less cynical throughout the movie. And
cool.
He grows as a person. And it's fun. And Ken Jeong plays, which usually he annoys me, but he's pretty good as the main bad guy at Lair.
Nice.
But he's the king, and his cronies, they're never beaten in the tournaments and stuff. So.
Just remember, Ken Jeong does have a medical degree.
Yes. But I kind of picked it because, like I said, it's kind of a little more lighthearted. It's kind of a crass comedy, and it's also the opposite side, where one is showing the person who's trying to accept himself, and then the other is showing the person who used to make fun of that person and then starting to accept them. So I thought it was a pretty good pairing, and it also has a connection to Slash because it's directed by David Wayne, who directed Wet Hot American Summer, and he was a director and writer for The State, which was what Michael Ian Black was in. Both of those things. So
It's all connected.
It's all connected by Michael Ian Black.
Not
from Kids in the Hall.
He is definitely, and then it's all inside a snow globe inside Tommy Westfall's mind.
Yes. So that is my pick, and that should be our show, but...
We have to pick another thing, and you forgot to get the iPads.
I did, so I'm going to go to the handy computer that we're actually recording on right now.
So we're probably going to... Oh, the House passes the bill with the $5.7 billion for border wall to shut down loons. Anyway.
Gotta log in real quick.
Most of this will be cut. I assume it will be cut. I should look up my Twitter handle. I don't remember it at all.
All right, so do we want a specific genre, or do we want to just go full-on random here with...
I say you lay it on me, let's go full random.
Okay. Cut to 90% or better on Rotten Tomatoes and spin the wheel. Here we go. Well, that's a great pick right there. I'm just going to say right now that, spoiler, like this movie.
Oh, yeah. But I think we should talk about it anyway.
Yes.
Because we got to it randomly. And what's our film, Kyle?
Many of you are going to know this. It is Hot Fuzz. Do we even need the synopsis for this? I mean, we should, just because some people aren't going to know, but you should know.
It's great. It is one of the 3 Flavors of Cornetto trilogy.
As a former London constable, Nicholas Angel finds it difficult to adapt to his new assignment in the sleepy British village of Sandford. Not only does he miss the excitement of the big city, but he also has a well-meaning oath for a partner. However, when a series of grisly accidents rocks Sandford, Angel smells something rotten in the idyllic village. And you can find Hot Fuzz on Netflix. And I don't think we mentioned that Slash was found on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
And also... Role Models is on Netflix for any of you that want to see that.
Good to know. Well, that's it from us. So, Kyle.
Until next time.
Well, before we end.
Oh.
Kyle, where can we find you on the internets?
You can find me at AwesomeKM on Twitter.
And I'm trying to remember what my Twitter handle is, so I will just...
I believe because I usually post you when I send it, and I think it's Noah_Saturn.
Yeah, Noah_Saturn, SATERN at Twitter.tumblr.com. I don't know.
You can find me on Reddit. This is my Tinder account. So anyway, until next time, do what you love.
And love what you do, as long as you don't eat someone in a shoe.
Goodbye.
Bye.